I had two thoughts like running simultaneously, and I was like hopping back and forth, and then one just sped away. Well, okay, scrap whatever I thought I was going to say.
Well, yeah, because I couldn't help it because I don't remember what I just said, to be honest with you.
I know, right?
Welcome to After Playlist, the music discussion and reaction podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Terry Yo.
And I'm Brandon Lee.
So, like the rest of the world, we've both been yelling, Mustard! At the top of our lungs and, letting people know it's my ego. Basically for any applicable reason we find necessary over the Thanksgiving break. So, naturally, we had to interrupt our entire lives, stop chewing on leftovers, had to kick grandma and all the cousins out the house so we could share our thoughts on these two albums that dropped last month. So today we're sharing our thoughts on Kendrick Lamar's GNX, which is his 6th studio album released on November 22nd, 2024, and Ice Cube's Man Down, which is his 11th studio album, also released on November 22nd, 2024. So, if you haven't listened to these albums, we're not going to list them all by track, so you can just find the albums. We have a playlist available for you directly in our show notes for your listening pleasures.
And before we dive into the episode, we have to pop out and show our After Playlist disclaimers, which, starting with number 1, of course, the usual, we respect everyone's opinion, regardless of how wrong and awful it may be. Number 2, if you're anything like us, these West Coast sounds make it a struggle to sit still, so we do not take responsibility for your inability to not dance and or sea walk to the beat. And number 3, we're just talking about the music, not the artist's real life, personal, or cancelable issues.
Well, maybe. We'll see.
That's true. We might get into that a little bit here, but
largely for the most part, we don't.
And lastly, if you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to give us a like and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. It's the easiest way to share and support the show. And yeah, without further ado, let's start bumping our conversation about these West Coast legends, bro.
West Coast, y'all. Oh, man. I don't even know where to begin. This has been, I want to say, refreshing, kind of cathartic. I don't know how I really feel, especially listening to both of them back to back. They ironically / unironically flow right into each other when
Kinda
listening
do,
to Kendrick first and then sliding into Man Down by Ice Cube. They are both West Coast artists, but to me they're so different, but yet they complement each other very well. So I guess we can jump right into what makes West Coast music. And again, another disclaimer. Number 4, we're two country bumpkins from the South talking about West Coast music. So let's be clear.
We've not just been like marinating in the culture of like the West Coast sound and hip hop and all that.
Exactly. But I have been to California, so I can't say that. But yeah, I'm definitely a country boy. But I'm a hip hop fan nonetheless. So I guess how would you describe West Coast sound if you had to put it in a definition after listening to this playlist and other West Coast music?
So it's something I've been thinking about a lot this last week or so, listening to these two albums. Hopefully, you've actually looked up what the actual definition, something I didn't think to do, of what like the West Coast sound actually is. But to me, it's always it's like one of two things. It's either like a very like smooth, groovy vibe. I feel like that like the instrumentation is like continuous, or it's like I guess there's still notes of that, but the other like style of sound I feel like fits the West Coast is whenever it's like it still has those aspects that I just said, but it's much more like amped up and like aggressive in a like antagonistic way. Like you get that vibe from the music itself, I feel like.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does. I can see that. So to me, when I think of West Coast music, I automatically think of like the evolution of funk music. So it has a lot, I won't say all of it, but a lot of it definitely samples heavy from like the funk music era, like the Parliament Funkadelics and George Clinton and a lot of those artists. a lot of West Coast rap, hip hop, in the evolution of that, lean heavily on that sound.
That's probably where the groovy part that I definitely recognize comes in, is all the funk inspirations.
Exactly. So, and happened to listen to, growing up, listening to West Coast music when West Coast music was like very popular in the late 1900s, with the Snoop and the emergence of Death Row and Tupac and all of that, and Dr. Dre and that whole sound. Warren G in the song Regulators, which samples a song by Michael McDonald, I believe. In his lyrics, he puts it very succinctly. And every time I hear this lyric in a song, I'm just like, this is a perfect synopsis to explain what West Coast and G Funk, what that sound is. So to me, and this is what Warren G said in the lyrics: G Funk, where rhythm is the bass and the bass is the treble, chords, strings, and melodies. So when you listen to the sound, it really kind of flips it up. So it's like what would typically be like the main chord, that's the bass line. The bass line is playing the main chord. And then what would be the bass line is actually the treble, the inverse of it.
Right.
So that's why a lot of it's kind of got that like you kind of have that groove with it, because that's something that like you have in a guitar, and guitar go like ding 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 ding, but then in G Funk on West Coast is like doom 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 doom, so it's kind of like that.
How's the guitar go again? Sorry, this made me laugh. No, I do totally hear what you're saying though. That's pretty neat. I don't have like I guess because I've never actually tried to like sit down and like actually produce a song. I've never actually thought about, or I don't usually, I should say, think about like breakdowns in that lens, so to speak. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense now that you say that.
For sure. So, I mean, like, so have you listened to like a lot of West Coast music, like intentionally? I mean, besides Tupac, let's say I know you know Tupac.
Oh, and honestly, I don't even know Tupac like super well. Like, I've definitely listened to Tupac, but like, he was before my time for sure. So that's the little bit I've listened to Tupac is like going back and like listening to some of his hits.
Okay.
I've definitely listened to I've listened to Snoop Dogg over the years. I mean, I've listened to, I feel like, a lot of West Coast just through the span of my life. But it's one of those things where a lot of that was before I was really knowledgeable about like West Coast versus East Coast versus Midwest versus South versus, all these other different types of like hip hop sounds. Like I would probably have noticed a different, like, oh, this sounds different than this, I wouldn't have known it was East Coast then probably, but oh, this song sounds different from this song. And I probably didn't think too much about it beyond that.
That's fair.
But I mean, there's definitely a ton of West Coast artists that like I know for a fact I've listened to over the years. But it's only been really with this podcast and like my friendship with you and our music discussions that we have that I've really started to like think about it.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I can't name a whole bunch of them off the top of my head, partly because, again, I love being from the South. Excuse me. I love being from the South, but not necessarily of the South. I like our ability to collaborate. And I like the fact that our sound has kind of had a stranglehold on hip hop and the rest of the world for like multiple decades now, which is cool because it used to be the inverse of that. That being said, there's so many things that it's so many artists that I can't tell where they're from because they're kind of just doing the Southern sound because that's what's quote unquote popular now. That the South has become pop more or less. So there are some modern artists now that still hold on to the West Coast sound. But that being said, for me, I don't really notice it unless it's like blatant.
Same.
Like, if there's like a G-Eazy or something that will come out with something, or a Tiger that will come specifically out with that sound. But then again, you have people like Iggy Azalea that came out with the West Coast sound, but like she's from Australia or whatever. And
that's a perfect example of that, actually.
So, really I'm So Fancy, that's a West Coast beat or whatever. So it's just like, that's a hole in my music knowledge that I want to spend more time learning more about, like some of the, not necessarily like the mainstream, but like some of the other artists on the West Coast scene that we don't get a chance to really hear over here because we're so saturated with our own sound. Plus, the mainstream being dumped on top of it. Like, because like what's the name? Like your boy Amine. Like he's technically a West Coast rapper too, but I think he's from California.
Well, see, I was
So
about to say you kind of touched on it with something else you said a minute ago as well. But yeah, like music today is so like as far as like falling into a genre, and especially falling into like a genre or a sound just because of like where you're at, because
mhm.
music is slowly becoming just more and more global each and every day. Like
Yeah,
you're not beholden just because you grew up in California. You're not beholden to be making that West Coast sound to be like popular. Like you can find a fan base on the East Coast doing an East Coast sound, even though you're in middle of LA. Like
yeah.
that's that doesn't necessarily like hold you down in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. Like, I mean, I'm definitely not for pigeonholing people there, but I do feel like there should be a little bit of more love given to that sound, just to diversify things. Like, I feel like right now we're on a character selection screen, and we got like the Southern sound turned all the way up to the max, and like all of our other attributes are like kind of lower. I think we need to kind of like even it out a little bit, just so we can have some more versatility in the sound that's being pumped out. Not to say that it's not out there, because you can search for anything that you want to find, but as far as things like the cream that's rising to the top, if you would,
Right.
I feel like it should be more versatility. And so when these albums came out on the same day, I was like, oh, finally the West Coast is back. Not to say that the West Coast hasn't been out there, because I don't know, but on a mainstream level, I was like, the West Coast is back.
Well, it's definitely been, I think, in small doses. I think it has been kind of seen. I think Kendrick has kind of been at the forefront of like the renewal, rejuvenation, revival, or whatever you want to call it, of like the West Coast sound in the last year or two. But yeah, Kendrick has definitely been. I feel like he's been bringing the West Coast sound back. Of course, then you have Ice Cube, who kind of, I feel like, I don't know if he was the first, but he has to be like considered one of the pioneers, right? Of West Coast
Yeah,
sound.
for sure. Yeah. I mean, he was in NWA. I mean,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
So yeah, like you said, just having both of these drop like on the same day with like the progenitor. I don't know, I'm mispronouncing that, but the precursor, the one of the people who came up with the sound itself, right? Coming out with a new album that totally encapsulates that sound with someone who's like modern day, making it like have a huge comeback, I feel like, and really showing his love to that sound that he grew up with and that he was like raised on listening to. It's just, you love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So comparing the two, now that you've been, I won't say fully immersed in Ice Cube, but you had a good bit of him. You know, Ice Cube's album had 19 tracks on it. Kendrick had 12. Now that you got a chance to hear Ice Cube more, how would you compare or contrast like their deliveries as far as like preference, I guess, personal preference?
My personal preference is hands down Kendrick.
Okay.
I gotta say, and just the flow switch ups, the voices, like the cadence voice switch up, the beats, just across the board. I feel like I personally enjoy Kendrick's album more, but don't get me wrong, that is not at all to say I did not enjoy Ice Cube's version. He definitely, in general, again, it's 19 versus 12, so it's definitely more of a little bit longer of a listen, album versus album. But I feel like in general, Ice Cube's Man Down has more of that like chill, like you're just vibing out on the sunny beaches of California, West Coast vibe. Like mostly in the beat selection that he uses on the
Yeah.
album. A lot of more of his songs definitely gave me that vibe than Kendrick. Kendrick's definitely a lot more of his songs fit the pop out and show them what's up vibe. And see walking everywhere.
Yeah. Which I mean, I still feel like Cube has some moments where I was pleasantly surprised by Ice Cube. I put it that way on this album.
It definitely surprised me too, because like again, I have listened to NWA, but I'm not listening to much of like Ice Cube's solo stuff like after NWA. Definitely not listening to anything from him like since the
Yeah,
80s or 90s. I don't know how much music he's honestly come out with like in between like that era and now, if it's been a decent amount or not, but I'm not really listening to any of it. So yeah, I was also pleasantly surprised by Ice Cube. I was also pleasantly surprised with like some of the beats he has and how like he samples himself from the same album.
Yeah,
Which is nice. Well, I don't know if that sample is from something else that I'm not aware of, but he definitely has some very nice touches. He's got some good wordplay. Just overall, the speed of his flow is just much more slower compared to Kendrick's.
So yeah, so I wanted to get into that. I was trying to nurse it out, but yeah. So to me, I enjoy them equally but differently. I enjoy Kendrick for the same reasons as far as his versatility and flipping it out. Flipping and singing, harmonizing, going fast, going aggressive, going soft, whatever he wants to do. I appreciate him for that. I appreciate Ice Cube for being consistent and being deliberate. And like with all of his flows, no matter what type of beat, he's versatile in his beat selection. He'll rap on anything.
Mm-hmm.
But Ice Cube when he gets on it, because he's, I don't want to say simplistic, but sometimes he goes simple. He goes, simple, but again, is aggressive. Is straight to the point. Like he's the one strike guy. He ain't trying to do 3 or 4 backflips. Doing this, karate chop, whatever. He's gonna just chop you right in the neck and move on to the next thing. And that's how I feel like with his verses is just boom, 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 boom. He's just gonna give it to you. Except there's one song where he just completely threw me off, and I just get giddy every time I hear the song. But we'll get into our favorite moments in just a minute on the album, all these different albums so far. But yeah, you did touch on something that I thought was pretty interesting as well, was the production side of things. For me, I appreciate Kendrick's album for the consistency, because he has his main producer, I think Soundwave, he did production on every track, along with having some other producers in. Obviously, Mustard,
Mustard, can't forget him.
Came through on one track, but a couple tracks. But overall, I thought it was sonically like the vibe. I felt the vibe throughout. Whereas I think Man Down has a consistent vibe, but also shows more versatility in this sound, if that makes sense. At least to me, that's the vibe I got from it. What do you think?
I largely agree with what you just said. I do think, again, having a few more tracks on the album definitely gives you a little bit more space for that to happen. Kendrick's, the GNX albums, like you said, I mean, there's definitely different sounds and everything, but as far as like the messaging and the theme of the album, it's kind of nice and tight. Whereas I kind of feel like Ice Cube's, not in a negative way, but I feel like it's just a little bit more meandering. I don't know if that's probably the right word. I feel like that has some negative connotations, but
not necessarily. I'm not sure if I fully agree with that, but I kind of can see where you're going with that though. So, like thematically, how would you describe GNX versus Mando?
Like in what regard?
Well, okay, that's fair. So like. Okay, let's just start with GNX. Let's just get into it. So the theme of this album, how do you feel the theme overall, the messaging of this album? Because I have a consistent message, but I'm not sure if I'm picking up on something that I might be missing.
Okay, I feel like the entire theme of this album, the entire message that he's trying to say is hip hop it's kind of a mix of like hip hop is. Obviously, he feels like in several songs he talks about how he's the best. It's his, he deserves it. But also just the fact that like hip hop needs, kind of like I was saying with like the West Coast sound and him trying to like revive the West Coast sound. Like I feel like he's saying West Coast needs some kind of rejuvenation, some kind of like revival type, like a Southern Baptist type revival. That's what whenever I say that, that's what I want you to like be picturing of the genre and the sound. That he's kind of, again, encompassing throughout pretty much the entire album. That's what I get from it. Mostly, I think a lot of the songs are like metaphors for him and like hip hop in general. And both like his like journey through it and how he's gotten to the top and like what that means, and like other people that are trying for that spot, what they've done or not done. Yeah, that's my take. I probably have not either thought about it too much or not thought about it enough. And obviously, in typical Kendrick fashion, I do feel like he has in each like individual song like double, triple, quadruple entendres and double meanings and all that type of stuff. So you could definitely read into it several different ways.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you think the theme is?
So for me, I feel like GNX is like it's a theme of starting over. So I feel like he's saying that, he wanted to go back to the beginning to where all he wanted was the GNX, vehicle, the Buick,
Mm,
and kind of going back to the root. So similar to the way of reviving the West Coast, but also I think it's kind of like a sense of him reviving himself, like coming back home to himself and like starting over
I
without
definitely see
starting
that.
over. Especially now since he's, independent, so to speak. He's still signed to a major, but he's no longer with TDE. He's doing his own
Yeah,
thing now.
the Heart Part 6 is definitely like in bodies everything you're saying. I feel like a lot with him kind of reminiscing about how he came up with TD and all those guys, but he's
Mm-hmm.
now he has set that down. This was his first album with
Mm-hmm.
his own label. He's now moving on
That's
with PJ
where,
Lang, right? I think is his new
yeah,
label. So this
yeah,
is like
PG
his first
Lang.
album with that. So like the Heart Part 6 is really like him closing the book on
Yes.
TDE and like all those experiences that he took from that and everything. And then, like you said, it is kind of I really like that you said that actually. It is kind of him starting over with this new chapter in his life, this
Yes.
next stage of where he's going to go. And I definitely think that goes hand in hand with what I was saying. I think that's tied into how he feels hip hop is. Like hip hop, he feels like is coming up on a new stage and that what is it going to sound like? What new sounds are going to come out?
Yeah. What new sounds, what new artists, and then, uh, yeah, just, yeah, overall, I mean, just the collaborations and the production wise, I just feel like he went into it with a cohesive sound, more or less, but then also reaching out to, I guess, I mean, y'all can correct me wrong in the comments, but to me, relatively unknown cats and putting them on, just to kind of elevate the next generation of
Definitely
West Coast
not like
rest.
household name artists,
Yeah,
but besides maybe SZA. Like,
well, I mean, SZA and Roddy Rich, like so, like
yeah,
like he's coming up. But so, what are your standout tracks on this album? I have a couple.
I don't know. I think it'd be quicker to talk about songs I don't like.
Okay, all right, let's go that route. What songs you weren't really feeling?
Um, there's really only two, and
Mm-hmm.
ironically, it's the two songs that have the most features.
Of
So,
course.
so it's the most time on a song from the album that like you don't have Kendrick rapping,
Mm-hmm.
which is Dodger Blue and GNX.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Again, I thoroughly enjoy. There's not a song on this entire playlist from either album that like I think at least let me scroll back through. I don't remember like particularly not liking any song from Ice Cube.
Oh,
So
I don't disagree with you as far as those two picks. I like Dodger Blue for the R&B ish kind of vibe of that. I can't fully relate because I'm not from LA, but I get the sentiment behind it.
mhm.
GNX, I skipped that song so many times.
Yeah, and I think we're not alone because I was looking yesterday or earlier today rather at the like number of plays, and it has I think the lowest on the album.
Well, so I mean, I get it because I mean, like he's he's putting up these newer cats or whatever. Tell him Kendrick did it. Somebody should tell Kendrick not so fast. It just it, okay. Ooh, I'm probably getting in trouble for this, but I don't care. Y'all can come at me in the comments. What? Why a lot of West Coast rappers got like a speech impediment or something, or lisp?
I
So
was wondering that if that was why is that so common?
yeah. So, and especially like again, I don't know his music. Maybe the rest of his music is better, but when Peso got on there, I was like, nah, I can't. I can't. Tell him Peso did it. I'm like, okay, I'm not. Again, I'm not
Yeah,
disparaging the list or whatever. You do you, follow your dreams, but I'm just like sonically, I was like,
it
it
definitely takes
just
you out a little bit.
it took me out of it, and just yeah, I just noticed a lot of them just got that. What's going on, man? Like everybody has that. I don't know.
I feel like
It's a different
it is
accent.
cool that like you said he brought in some newer younger artists or whatever, but none of the verses were like great.
The only one that kind of caught me off a little bit was the dude that sounded like Proof, which Proof from D12 Eminem's group.
Mm-hmm.
He came in with a deep voice and kind of did the I'm talking on the mic, rapping slow
See, I don't even
on a
remember. Was
beat.
that Hit J3 or Young Threat? Like, I
I
don't remember
I,
who's
I
it
think
was
that
who.
was I think that was Young Threat because they say their name at the end of ended up chorus or verse or whatever. I think that was Young Thread. I think I don't know. Either way, I was starting to not listen to that track as much, so I skipped it a lot.
Well, okay. Now that we kind of got, I guess, I do like. Besides those two are being my least favorite. Like, it's really hard to say what my favorite song or like favorite songs are.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like everyone obviously is loving TV Off
Of
because,
course.
as we've referenced already a few times, there's this out of nowhere mustard, and not only that, it has it twice. Which the first time, just like gave me like whiplash for me whipping my head around at this track so fast. The second time just really like made me laugh, especially with like the line. I forget what the line. It's like showed up in LA with the etiquette yelling. I forget, but just the way he structured that is just like such a nice little like line,
Just
and then he just
segue
right into mustard again. But I mean, we already mentioned the Heart Part 6, and that's really like a nice touching song with it being a kind of a book close to the past stage of his
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
Lyrically, I think Gloria might be my
Yes.
favorite, which you probably could have
Yes.
guessed that.
Yep. Well, I was guessing that for you, but also definitely for me. That was one of the ones that, upon first listen, I was just like, Gloria, like who's Gloria? And I was thinking for a second, I was like, okay, because I thought, what's her name? Why am I blanking? Jay-Z had a song called Gloria, dedicated to his mom, I think, or grandma or whoever. And I was like, oh, he got a Gloria too in his life. That's weird. But then like when listening to it, the first time I was trying to catch what he was talking about. I'm like,
Same.
okay. It's like, is this a relationship? Like, who is this person? Then some of the lyrics is like, I was like, huh? And then when he said the line at the very end of the song, I was like, oh. And then upon re-listening to
It's
it,
his pin.
yes, like I end up
And once you hear that,
all the nuggets all the way through.
there's so many double, triple entendres throughout that.
Yes.
Like one of my favorites is you caught the body, but the pen slipped the sentence.
Oh, my favorite line was like, "Oh, I can guess your favorite movie. Let me guess. Is it The
Notebook.
Notebook?" I was like, "Oh, come on, Kendrick." You're killing me.
It's funny because I literally had a similar reaction, like both my first and second time, but for different reactions. The first time it's like, oh, of course, this lady's favorite movie is The Notebook. Second time through, it's like, oh, it's so in your face once you know it's there.
Yeah, once you know it's coming, it's like, wow, you just talking about like erasing our lives and things together. And then when the pen snapped back on them, I gave you. I was like, damn, not the hands up, damn. Pentel being aggressive as hell, like hell no. Put that ink maid down. But yeah, I love that. And just. I mean, I'm quite sure it's been said before, and if you don't know by now, SZA is a national treasure. Like she is.
I love SZA so much.
She's gosh, she's amazing. Talent and easy on the eyes, and just charismatic and equally as weird and goofy. Like she's definitely like my type for sure.
Agreed. We can fight over.
Just like Michael Jackson once said, "I'm not a fighter, I'm a lover." Oh gosh, but yeah, I had to give it up to obviously Gloria and Dodger Blues and TV Off are my favorites. But Squabble Up, you gotta have that. I mean,
it's like literally the first 7 songs of this album, dude. Whacked Out Mural, Squabble Up, Luther, Man at the Garden, Hey Now, Reincarnated, and then TV Off might be like the best like 7-song stretch of Kendrick's, at least off of any album. Like I could listen to those 7 songs by themselves on repeat, back to back to back, over and over again, nonstop, forever. I feel like.
I can see that. And so I had texted you earlier when I was like, oh yeah, this Man at the Garden reminds me of One Mic. And then I followed up and said, "Oh shit, never mind." That's because it literally samples that.
Literally, and I was like, "You sent me the One Mic or whatever song," and I was already halfway through listening to it. Whenever you're like, "Oh, never mind," and with like the emoji zipped face, I was like, I was already halfway through it, and as soon as it was like 20 seconds in, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he sampled this.
Yeah. and then shortly afterwards, I was thinking to myself, I was like, Reincarnated. I was like, okay, I like the messaging in the song, the story that he's telling from like the guy and then the
female
singer and
singer.
chick and all of that, but then also him reincarnating himself in a Tupac style delivery because he raps like Tupac in the song. And I was like, dang, he sound like Tupac. And I happened to look up sampled Tupac in that song.
That makes sense.
So the beat itself reminded me of a Tupac, old classic Tupac beat. And then his delivery, he goes into it. So I was just like, okay, so there's another reincarnate. So I guess he's, saying second comment to Tupac, blah, 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 blah. Y'all can fight over that. It is what it is. But overall, I'm very pleased with the album. I would say to date, this is my favorite Kendrick album. I just like the style, the versatility, and just him having more, I guess, more arrogance and more confidence. I guess, if that makes more sense. I'm not sure if that makes sense or not. But
well, he's because like on as much as I appreciate when an artist is like super vulnerable and genuine with their music, I feel like for me at least, he went too far that direction for Mr. Morale.
Yeah.
His last album. It's definitely like you get something out of listening to it, but it's not like an easy listen. And I feel like this song definitely, he still has like vulnerable moments, but it's a lot easier. He definitely has a lot more like bumpers. That's how I think of them. Like if I had to pick my two favorite, it would literally be Whacked Out Murals, which opens the song just with high energy, high octane. Just he's bringing it bars, and then of course Gloria, which is like kind of the opposite as far as Kendrick is concerned, with much more subdued kind of sentimental lyrics.
Yeah, it's like an ode to his pen, or an ode to developing his craft when he was younger. So yeah, I mean, I'm a fan. I mean, 5 stars. Both of these albums are 5 stars in my opinion.
I definitely do agree though that this is probably my favorite Kendrick album.
I think so because again, like this album is more of an easier listen to. You don't have to really get all on your feelings and pull out a thesaurus and try to rack your brain for stuff. It's in your face, but also you can see that he's kind of evolving a little bit. So I appreciate the evolution.
There's definitely, I feel like this is an album I'm going to be listening to for a long time going forward, and I feel like at least for the next little bit, I'm still going to be finding, because this, as of recording, has only been out for a week, so I'm definitely still going to be finding as I continue to listen those double meanings and those triple entendres and the fancy wordplay that Kendrick is, I would think, known for at this point. I'm looking forward to it.
Fair enough. All right, so let's slide on down to Man Down. So Man Down, I went into this album not really knowing what to fully expect at all. I heard, It's My Ego, which we featured early on. So I just thought he just dropped a one-off single. I had no idea an album was coming. So I thought it was just like,
same.
I was like, Ice Cube just felt like getting back in the studio and just threw something out, out there to have some fun with. And then next thing I was like, yeah, the whole album out. I was like, what? Like, who approved this? I was not ready. But fuck it, we in this. I would say I love this album for so many different reasons. I love the production because it's a more upbeat album for sure throughout. I feel like Ice Cube sounds great on songs where there's a little bit more of a Southern influence onto it. And I was wondering, production wise, how many producers were on this album compared to Kendrick, because Man Down, there's a variety, there's a wider variety of different sounds and styles of production that he's flowing on. And some of them, I'm listening to the beats and stuff, and I'm just like, okay, this sounds, I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And on one song in particular that really was racking my head until recently I looked it up. I was trying to crack the code on my own, but on the song Fighting for My Life in Paradise with Ice Cube and Corrupt, the beat sounds like a 3 6 Mafia beat. It sounds like a song that 3 6 Mafia would rap on. Like Juicy J, like you would hear that. And I did. Then I kept hearing the hope with the samples in the background. I was like, okay, that's straight up 3 6 Mafia. So I was like, okay. I say, did they produce a beat for Ice Cube? And one of my favorite songs of all time is Real Roll Call on Lil Jon featuring Ice Cube. And just hearing Ice Cube on a Little John beat. Oh, that just like it's so good. It's just the aggressive nature of his voice and cadence. I highly recommend y'all go listen to that song if you haven't. It's definitely NSFW, and if you don't like hearing the N bomb, don't listen to that song. But if you do, if you can tolerate it, worth the listen.
Yeah,
but
that's good advice.
So throw that disclaimer out there.
Well, it's definitely so for the entire album. I feel like it's kind of something you touched on. Like it is like happier vibes in general, like more upbeat vibes. But I get the feeling for the vast majority, like 90+% of the songs on the album, that like just while I'm listening to them, I'm just picturing Ice Cube with that like that. You know that look where he has like one eyebrow cocked, but he's like angry. Like that's like the vibe his voice has.
Yes, 100%.
Like it may be like kind of a happy, upbeat like beat, and even lyrically, it may be like a positive thing he's saying. But just like the way he's like so aggressive on his delivery, definitely makes you think like he's rapping about happy stuff, but he's like angry while he's doing it. Well, which I just feel like is like that's like Ice Cube's style, right? Is that just his thing?
Yeah. He just has that default aggressive voice. That's just a sound. Period. He's like the West Coast. Well, I guess DMX would technically be the East Coast Ice Cube, since Ice Cube predates DMX. But you get what I'm trying to say. Like they have a similar cadence. Also, the same thing with Killer Mike. Like to me, Ice Cube, Killer Mike, like same type of like aggressive, like straight to the point, aggressive flow. You're gonna hear every lyric, every syllable that they say, because it just penetrates the beat like that. Which is why
it penetrates the beat. That is such a great way to put it. Yes, dude. Yeah, it's. I don't know if it's like which aspect is most responsible for that. If it's the aggressiveness or just the tone or what, but yeah, it penetrates the beats.
Yes, sir.
I love that.
Yep. And that's why I was so glad that Ice Cube featured Killer Mike on the "It's My Ego Maniacs" remix. I was like, this like Killer Mike just bodies it. Like he just comes on.
All three of them kill that. Which the first time listening to, it was funny because again, there's like what did we say, like 18, 17 songs on here? There's 19 songs. So like, "It's My Ego" is number 2, and to be honest, my first time listening to the whole album. We had just recently featured "It's My Ego," so I kind of skipped that one because I was like, "Oh, I've listened to that one a bunch. On subsequent listens, I'll make sure I hit it again." But I want to listen to like the new songs, right? So I skipped that one, and so I get to the very end to "Egomaniacs," and it was driving me up the wall, dude. I was like, "Where do I know this beat from, man?" And so, like, what I did, because before we decided to do this episode, it was like a couple days after the Kendrick album had dropped, so I'd already listened to Kendrick like just on its own. Their GNXs, rather. I'd listened to that like a few times back to back. So I made a point to like listen to Ice Cube just like on repeat back to back a couple times before just going through and listening to both. And so yeah, I literally took just looping "Man Down" back to the top and then getting to "It's My Ego." I was like, oh, it's my ego. He sampled himself, of course, or he remixed himself, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, it's a remix of that song. Yeah,
which is just cool to see that like on the same album, like one song in the beginning and then he remixes it again in the end.
Yes, I love it. It definitely harkens back to days of old where sometimes you'll have multiple remixes on the same album. But anyway, the reason I was bringing up the Southern sound was I was finally tracked down the credits, and he got some Southern producers on here. So on the song that I mentioned earlier that I thought was a 3 6 Mafia song, that was actually produced by David Banner, rapper and producer from Mississippi. And what's the name? Almighty EA Ski, legendary producer who was once signed to No Limit Records, which is based in New Orleans. Lil Jon produced a track on here as well. He produced Talk About These Rappers.
It's funny because I don't think of Lil Jon as a producer most of the time.
Wow. Yeah. I think about him more of a producer first than a rapper.
Objectively, I know I should, but just like whenever I hear the name Lil Jon, most of the time, 99% of the time, all I think of is, what? Okay. And that's about it.
I understand. That's fair. But I tend to think of him more of a producer first because again, I was studying the art of production around that time, and I could pick out a Lil Jon beat, and when I was hearing that song, I was like, it has that had that little that
Mm-hmm.
synthesized sound, and I was like, that kind of reminds me of Lil Jon, but I guess the new generation kind of took that and ran with it, and then I come to find the credits, I was like, oh, okay, it was Lil Jon. So overall, this album definitely qualifies for upbeat songs that have a deeper meaning. So a lot of these songs, what I've noticed, Ice Cube as of late, is kind of done like a 180. So he's kind of went from still fuck the police, but also now like, hey, let's be grown men,
Yeah.
situations. So, and I
Which
was
I
curious.
would expect, because I mean, he even has, I forget what song it's on, but maybe talking about these rappers. But he has a couple of lines where he's like, he's talking like younger. I think it is that one because he's talking to younger rappers. He's like, I've been alive. Like I've already lived two of yous. I've already lived three of yous. Like I know
Yeah,
what I've got some wisdom. I've got some experience both in the game and just in life in general. So it's always kind of a shame whenever someone gets to like their 40s and 50s and they're still like just as immature. They haven't really grown as a person since they were in their 20s. You don't want to see that. That's just sad. So I, for one, am happy that Ice Cube has changed as a person and he's not still the same as he was 20, 30 years ago.
exactly. I totally agree with that. And I found a little quote about the album. He said, the concept of man down is a situation where men are down and we need them to get back up. And then when referring to the album cover, which is like a young man walking down the street and you see people like all these different types of men laying down. He says, if you look at the album cover, you'll see a kid walking and you'll see the different men in the society down. And it also represents what happens if all the real men stop doing what they're supposed to be doing, stop giving a fuck and just quit. So just like the world would stop, nothing would move. So we need everybody to get up and get their shit together and make this happen. Because if everybody gives up, everything's just gonna fucking stop. So
Yeah, it definitely. I was gonna say this, or I was planning to say this just a second, but it ties in what you just said. I definitely get the vibe that the entire album, like the theme of the album, was like Ice Cube. Everything that he says in the album is something that's kind of been brewing for a while, and it's like this is almost like a therapy. He's like getting all of this off his chest.
mhm.
It's kind of how definitely it felt coming across for me. It's like he's just like unloading all these thoughts he's had for a while.
Yeah, it's definitely old man preaching to the young men situation. But I don't know. Like I'm of two minds with it. I'm of the mind of yes, we as men need the man to fuck up and take care of our responsibilities. However, there's a fine line between the whole toxic masculinity part of it as well
Yes,
as
I
you
wanted to
know
touch on this as well. Yeah.
yeah. So when listening to the album, like there's some line like okay, let's call it out. The song "So Sensitive."
So
I,
sensitive. Yes, I'm
yeah,
glad. Okay, let's talk about it
yeah.
because there are some good points.
Hmm.
Like both on this song in particular and just the album in general. He makes a lot of good, like he's coming. I'm being too optimistic, but I feel like he's coming from like a good place. But there's definitely, like you said, there's a fine line between like manning up and being responsible doing all this and then going too far and like he talks about in the song like okay so sensitive, right?
Hmm.
There are a lot of sensitive people,
Yes.
and like one of the examples he uses is like pronouns, right? That's been a big thing in our country. I for one feel like it is the easiest thing in the world that if someone asks you to call them a certain way, you just okay, cool, that's what I'll call you from now on, and you just go about your day.
Yeah.
um Obviously he's someone who feels a little bit more severe about it, I guess, because he happens to mention it.
Hmm.
And that's definitely, I feel like, a perfect example of like going a little bit too far and like trying to own your masculinity, and it's a little bit toxic.
I partially agree with that. I definitely agree that it can go too far on both sides, which
Hmm.
is
Yes,
it's hard to equate, but I'm gonna try my best to say this without offending anybody. I totally agree with you when it's that when if somebody wants you to call them by a certain pronoun or whatever, or if you want to be called Susie for the rest of this episode, okay, cool, you're gonna be
but
Susie.
there's
That's
definitely
fine.
like a limit to that, right? Where you have to like after a certain point, you can't just suspend your disbelief, so to speak, anymore. It's like if you want me to start calling you like just crazy stuff that I've never heard before that makes no sense,
Hmm.
I might still do it, but I'm at least gonna look at you weird, like, dude, that's weird. Like,
Exactly. But and that's the other side of the coin. It's like, okay, you're trying to comply with whatever whatever that person requests, but then if you slip up, that person should not get mad at you for slipping up.
no,
And that's where I think both sides are kind of missing the point. Is like you got some people that are like, oh, you're gonna be whatever you were called at birth, and this is gonna be it, and I'm not changing because blah 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 blah. But then also you got the other side is like, okay, well, I'm gonna play the victim card no matter what. And then I'm just gonna get mad at you off rip if you misgender me or misrepresent or whatever. So I just think I'm gonna say the C word, compromise. I just think we need to kind of get in the middle with that and just, let people, let people live their lives. I'm not telling you how to live your lives. If you want to be Becky or if you want to be whatever, them, they, or whatever, that's fine. But, if I slip up, don't nail me to the cross, for slipping up.
exactly.
Like give me an opportunity to adjust and, let's like meet me halfway in that process. Don't just completely just,
No, try to
unload all your trauma onto the person that's literally trying to help you, or
try
trying to comply
to
with you.
understand the intent behind
Yes.
those situations. Like, obviously, like you were just saying, in that situation, if they had seen you or heard you rather attempt, you already called them what they had asked you to a few times or whatever, and then like later down the line you slip up and misspeak, like
Mhm.
they should know you're trying, right? And they should give you
Yeah.
some grace in that, especially if what they're asking you to call them is like kind of out there from what is quote unquote like standard,
Yeah.
what we would be more used to. But then at the same time, like, yeah, just basically exactly what you said, like just compromise. Don't be in your feelings because people have a different worldview from you, or are, don't exactly line up with how you are trying to either live your life or view the world through your own eyes or whatever. Like, you definitely got to
Mhm.
compromise and try and understand the other person's perspective, have some empathy. Just
Exactly.
be good to each other, man. Just
Yeah, exactly. Just
just
at the end of the day, just let people live. Stop trying to control people.
yeah.
So, but I do feel like this album is definitely trying to wake people up to, I don't know, like the things that there's like multiple themes in this album.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of the manosphere stuff going on, but not too far into it to where like I can't listen
he's
to it.
he's toeing the line, and I feel like he toes over it a couple of times, but for the most part, he
Yeah.
stays like right on the line.
Yeah. And then there's also the other line of like, don't trust like the government a little bit, a little bit of that kind of stuff. And like everything is fake and like kind of waking you up a little bit. I'm trying to tiptoe and not say the word woke because people have bastardized that word and it has lost all meaning of consciousness at this point. But basically trying to tell people to wake up and like be aware of what's happening. Like the song "Break the Mirror" with Ice
Mm-hmm.
Cube and Exhibit.
Which is one of my favorites
Yes, I love it.
on the album,
I
in
just
no
needed to
large
be
part
like,
because Exhibit. I've not listened to Exhibit on a song in like decades. So
yeah,
it's just
exactly. It's
very
great to hear
nice.
him, and it's great to hear that he still got it, and just like the beat and the vibe and the way that and the messaging within the song, like break the mirror, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like why would you break the mirror? I'm just like, oh shit, like it's like literally breaking yourself, break down, like you're looking at
Mm-hmm.
yourself. So instead of talking to the man in the mirror, like break away from that, like get out of your own way a little bit, and then like even like the song like Let's Get Money Together. Again, it's a bop, you dancing, you in the club, but hell, it's a message. Like he's like, hey, yo, let's not deal with, let's cut out the middleman and let's keep the
Right.
money within our own communities and all and work on building our own wealth and stuff like that. So I like the messaging with it. It's just, I mean, it's 2024. We're on a podcast, and Ice Cube hates the internet because he roasts the internet so many times on this album. It just cracks me up how much
It's true.
how much he despises the internet, which I get it. Like one of my favorite lines was like, "Oh, this person did a whole background on Cain and Abel, but don't even know his great grandmama's name." I was like,
Yeah.
"Damn," and it's so true. Like all these people be doing all these deep dives and stuff,
Yeah.
and got these conspiratorial videos of full analysis and breakdown. But then you ask them like, "What's their social security number?" They got to pull up their phone. It's like, what? How do you not know this information about yourself? But yet, all this other stuff about other people. It just cracks me up.
Definitely as someone who just very recently turned 30, I still feel like at least like compared to the like old man screaming Ice Cube kind of embodies here, I'm definitely more on like the younger man side of things. He
For
definitely
sure.
oscillates between like okay, I hear you, Ice Cube, and okay, I hear you, Ice Cube. Like you know, like it's just there's several songs on here that I feel like the messaging kind of loses me, but the beat and just like again his rapping penetrating the beat, as you said
Yes.
earlier, just the style of that just brings me back in. So I'm still like totally vibing out, listening, like, nodding along, vibing to the track, even if the message itself, I'm like, eh.
Yeah. Speaking of one of the songs that the messaging was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna listen to this on the podcast, but I probably won't have it in my rotation at all. 5150.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, that was one I skipped a couple times.
Well, it's part part of it is the message, but then the chorus, I can't rock with it. It rhymes, but it doesn't make sense. This bitch is psychotic. She needs an antibiotic. An antibiotic isn't gonna help with that. That's a mental situation. Like when she got the flu. Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. It's like, why she need an antibiotic? Like that's when my retail pharmacy brain kicks in. I'm just like, huh? That's kind of you kind of misdiagnosing her on that one, dog. So, and I couldn't let that go, so I had to kind of skip that one.
And is that one literally just about like a girl acting crazy?
Yeah.
Like that one's not like that one's not like a deep hidden message, right?
No, not that I can tell for the week that we listened to it, but yeah, just a crazy bitch story. But
Yeah, that was one I skipped a few times, I think. What were you about to say?
I was gonna say I have a song that I thoroughly enjoyed that I'm quite sure you probably skipped, but I don't know. Like, so sometimes I feel like I can read you when it comes to these songs, but then you always throw me a curveball. So for me, my favorite two songs on this whole album. Okay, three. My favorite three songs. Okay, favorite four songs on this whole album are "She's Sanctified."
Yeah, She Sanctified is my favorite.
Yeah, featuring Mount Westmore, aka Snoop, E40,
Too
Too
Short.
Short, and man, excuse me. What's his name? October London. This guy. If this guy's not Marvin Gaye reincarnated, I don't know who is. He sounds so much like Marvin Gaye. I love his voice. But yeah, She's Sanctified. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, Especially You. Number three, Take Me to Your Leader. And number four, Egomaniacs. Those are my top four picks.
Okay, give me just a second to listen to Especially You, because I'm blanking on that one after you said it.
Once you hear it, you'll be like, oh yeah, that one. The one I skipped.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you said, except for Especially You.
I knew
it. You hit the nail on the head. You were right on the money for that one. That one just has, which I get it is Ice Cube, but that one has like too much of a throwback.
Oh
like,
man,
it's so much of a throwback. It like takes me out of it.
Okay, that's fair. To me,
but I did really like Take Me to Your Leader. What was the other one you said? She Sanctified was my favorite on the album. Take Me to Your Leader, I really like that one. Mm-hmm. And then Egomaniacs. Yeah, Egomaniacs was great too, because Busta and like you already said, Killer Mike, they both slay that track.
Yes. Oh man, but Especially You is such a good song, man. Like I just think it takes me back to like the roller rink days and shit. Like
it's his cadence that takes me out for me, dude. Yeah. It's just like it's got just enough of that hip to the hop. Like it's not fully that. It's not. Don't get it twisted. It's not that. But it's got notes of that, and it's got just enough notes of that it's like brings me out of it.
So I finally, again, like I said, I finally tracked down the production on it. I was like, okay, who produced this crazy ass track? And that was none other than Ice Cube himself. So I was like, that song is 100% Ice Cube. Just throwback, having fun, just with the old school funk, and just you just want to have some fun, just out here wilding out. And it cracks me up because the juxtaposition of his aggressive ass voice on this party track that, like, I know, if anybody was DJing, like could throw that on and there'll be like a whole vibe, kind of thing. So that's what I was thinking. And I just had a feeling, I was like, I'm enjoying this so much. Brandon's going to hate this song. But I don't know. I don't know what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, I won't say I hate it, but I definitely skipped it several times.
Yeah. But jumping back to the standout song on the album, She's Sanctified. Again, October London, love his voice, that old school, that silky smooth 70s R&B style voice. Like, dude, phenomenal. Love this man's voice. He's gonna blow up. I love the collaboration with all the West Coast guys. To me, E40 is one of those guys that's like either hit or miss for me.
Yeah, same.
And on this one, I fully enjoyed all the like I enjoyed all
too,
of that.
Man.
Like he killed it, and then the beat switch with it too. I was like, he switched the beat switch, and he still did his whole and it still flowed with the beat too. And I was like, oh, this is so beautiful. And I had just the right amount of Too Short, which was like the shortest verse.
It was not too short. It was not too long.
Yes.
It was the perfect amount.
The perfect amount of Too Short. So I just like, that was just
perfect short.
Perfect short. Short Kings Unite. So yeah, that one, I definitely played that song the most between that one and Especially You.
Yeah, I think either She's Sanctified or both Egomaniacs and It's My Ego, because like once I skipped it that first time, I always I mean, we featured it on another episode, other playlist because it's so good. So like obviously that one's got to be up there.
Absolutely.
I also really like the Three Little Piggies and Ghetto Story, just those back to back, like what he's talking about on those. Yeah,
I like the song he did with the JD from Lynch Mob. Just the messaging of that song and how powerful that song is. The fact being that, you know, dude just got out of jail, and you know, and Cube reached out to him and put him out, you know, put him on this new album. You know, so that throws a little bucks, you know, a few bucks his way for him to, you know, get back on his feet kind of deal. And I like how he said at the end, you know, I'm glad you're out. Stay your ass out. You know what I mean? So
I even says at the beginning, I just scooped up JD. He's been hot for more than a decade.
Yes.
After doing more than a dub. So like,
yeah.
He's like, I got you, bro.
Yes.
You love to see that.
But we cannot not talk about these rappers. That's the one that Lil Jon produced. And, I love the end of that song. When he just goes off so much.
Yeah, I just had to look when he's like, I'm not. Or he's like,
he was like, yeah, you know,
don't subscribe to me. Unlike me, man.
Unshare me, bitch. Unshare me, ho.
Yeah, that part.
Unlike me. Hang up, bitch.
This is he oscillates back and forth between like having a good point and going just a hair too far. But this was the song where I was like, no, you're on it on this one, Ice Cube. You're making some good points here, dude.
Yes. Oh man,
because it's so true, dude. We're just our society today. It's so easy to just like hop online and just vitriol just out of your fingertips at everyone around you, wherever you're at on the online space, and it's just like, dude, shut up.
Exactly. And another quick shout out to Mike Epps making an appearance on here as well. Comedian, actor.
Yeah.
Over here doing
production.
No Cap.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which, you know,
I like that one too.
Yeah. So I was listening to that and I was like, is that Mike Epps? I thought it was a Mike Epps sample. And it wasn't. It was actually him in the studio doing his thing. So I'm like, okay, go ahead, Mike. Over here representing. Ice Cube and Mike Epps still collaborating since next Friday. That's crazy. So, but overall, man, how would you feel as far as like, well, now since you spent a little time listening to more West Coast music, do you feel like your ear has like enhanced or de-enhanced, if you would, your taste in hip hop overall, or has it elevated it, or how has it changed?
So, well, kind of like I said at the top of the episode, coming into these two albums, listening to these two albums, I definitely would not have been able to give you like a clear, like if a West Coast style sounding song was playing, I wouldn't be able to point to it necessarily like, oh, that's West Coast. I definitely feel slightly more confident. I could at least point out, be like, oh, that's a West Coast beat. Now that I've had not just these two albums, but these two albums are definitely just like the most recent showcase of like like I've been saying the whole episode, kind of this reincarnation, energizing of the West Coast sound, especially in hip hop. I would say it's enhanced. I'm 100% ready for more West Coast sounds, especially if it's of this caliber of music. I'm super excited to hear more mustard. Both, with Kendrick and just any other artist he wants to work with. Which, fun fact about him, his real name is Dijon.
Yes,
which is I'm pretty sure where DJ Mustard, where he got that name from.
Yeah, which again, when I heard DJ Mustard, I was like, okay, why would he choose that stupid ass name? And then when I found out his name was Dijon, I was like, oh, it all makes sense.
Dijon is also like
it's a fancy mustard, right?
I mean, it is a fancy mustard, but it's also like a reoccurring, just in hip hop in general, going back to like the 80s and 90s. It's been like a reoccurring symbol in hip hop that just like every rapper, like I feel like you've not made it as a rapper if you don't have a bar somewhere talking about Dijon mustard or Grey Poupon or both.
True.
Like it's one of those things that just like it's just if you're a rapper, you're gonna have a bar about those somewhere, usually multiple times throughout your career.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. Because like that's like a sense of elevator. Like I moved past French's mustard. Now I'm using Grey Poupon and Dijon or whatever.
Which all of the memes from TV off and him screaming mustard, like all the TikToks of different people screaming, and like Heinz.
Yes,
they got the giant billboard with just mustard behind just a bottle of mustard, which is great.
That's awesome.
I just want to say real quick though, is it not like him doing that? Is that not possibly like the biggest producer shout out an artist has done, at least in recent years?
Honestly,
I couldn't think of another artist giving like a bigger shout out to their producer on the track than literally screaming his name twice.
I mean, honestly, you're 1000% correct. Like DJ Mustard's stock has like gone up.
It's so high. Which he was already super successful before, but now I feel like he's gonna be like everyone's gonna want to be working with Mustard.
Oh yeah. Like this whole that whole Mustard yell, like to me, it's gonna be the same thing as the Lil Jon What's and Yes, forever. It's like it's cemented now. So you can't not see Mustard and not go Mustard. Just like you see Lil Jon is always what? Yeah. It's things that is going to be cemented in our zeitgeist going forward.
Yeah, the zeitgeist. Absolutely.
So yeah, I 1000% agree with that. That is crazy, man. I'm so happy. I'm so happy these albums exist. Like I needed this honestly for myself because I was somewhat getting bored with the 808s and hi-hats per se. Like I kind of just sonically I was kind of getting a little bit bored with that. But kind of going back into this is just it was a breath of fresh air for me sonically. To be like, okay, I miss the sound.
It's just nice. West Coast.
Here's something different.
It's nice to hear something different, but it's also just nice for, in my opinion, West Coast vibes, like specifically like on like the instrumentation and the beat and everything. Whenever you have that combined with like grade A lyricists like Kendrick, or even, I don't know if most people would say Ice Cube is like a grade A, like Pulitzer winning lyricist necessarily, but he's obviously been in the game for decades. So like he knows how to pin a very good bar. So both of these are just great examples of like when you have good lyrics and good delivery and good flow mixed with the vibe, because like just the beats alone just make you start, bouncing your shoulders and rocking back and forth. And then you combine that with just introspective, deep, or even just as well put together just for how it sounds lyrics is just, for me, that's it doesn't get much better than that when it comes to hip hop. So I am again super excited, super hyped for more of this style of music coming out. I cannot wait to see. Hopefully, maybe in a couple of years, it'll be how you were saying the Southern sound is kind of just like what's popular to everyone, even if you're not from the South, is mimicking that. I kind of want to see a little bit more of that from the West Coast sound. Maybe maybe we'll have some Southern Atlanta-based rappers aping the West Coast sound. That'd be interesting to see how they put their spin on it.
Touche. I mean, yeah, that would be great to hear. You know what else would be great to hear? It'll be great to hear from you guys, you listeners. We appreciate you guys listening to our podcast. This episode in particular, these are our random quick thoughts. Saying this album just came out a week ago, so we had to scrap it and get it down and get these listens in because it was just too good to not squeeze it in during the holidays. If you want to hear more of the podcast, you can always go to afterplaylist.com. There you'll find our social media links, previous episodes, as well as previous playlists. Feel free to like and share this episode and that music playlist. It's totally free and it helps support the show. But if you want to do a little bit more, you can go to our Patreon at patreon.com/afterplaylist. It is under construction right now, but feel free to make a donation if you want to. If not, totally cool.
Yes, your support. In any way you choose to support us, any support is very appreciated.
Exactly.
We love that you love us.
Exactly. And we love that you're listening. So until next time, keep on listening.
Keep on listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Black Giraffe made this.
Black Giraffe made this.
That was pretty good, dude. Honestly.
Yes, sir.